I want you to just take a second and imagine that you're trapped in a totally confined space.
Like a really long flight or something.
Yeah, exactly. And you're basically a captive audience forced to watch this glaring, super uncomfortable injustice unfolding right in front of you.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. You want to intervene, you feel that tightness in your chest, your heart rate is spiking, but you're just, well, frozen in your seat.
Yeah, that classic paralysis where you just don't know what to do.
Exactly. But then you step out of that space and suddenly, like out of nowhere, the perfect, totally consequence-free opportunity for payback just magically lands right at your feet.
So the real question is, do you take it?
Right. What would you do? Because that exact scenario played out on this multi-day train ride across India, which we actually found in a pretty vividly recounted firsthand account today.
Yeah, it's from the petty revenge corner of Reddit.
Yep. So if you're a learner who, loves a good story, but really wants to understand the psychological mechanics underneath it, you're in the right place for this deep dive.
It really is the ultimate situational pressure test. I mean, when you look at it.
Totally.
And what makes this specific first-hand account so compelling isn't even just the revenge itself. It's that the author was only like 12 or 13 years old at the time.
Right, just a kid.
Exactly. So we're getting a front row seat to human observation, the quiet agony of the bystander effect, and how sometimes, a spontaneous rebalancing of the scales comes from the most unlikely person in the room.
So let's get right into the pressure cooker that actually provoked all of this. We've got this young teenager and their dad, and they're on a massive 3-day train journey to Delhi. Specifically, the source says they're traveling the leg from Vadodara to Bhubaneswar.
Which is a really long haul.
Oh, yeah. And if you've ever done a multi-day train ride or, a really long international flight, the psychological landscape of that carriage totally changes.
Oh, completely. It's not just a commute anymore.
Right. It becomes this temporary rolling village.
Yeah, you're sharing recycled air, very limited space, and a totally fixed schedule with complete strangers.
Right.
That environment forces a sort of artificial intimacy. I mean, in a normal setting, if someone makes you uncomfortable, you just walk away.
You leave the coffee shop or whatever.
Exactly. But on a long-haul train, your brain has to adapt to the fact that you really can't escape.
Right.
So you become like hyper-aware of the microculture forming in your immediate vicinity.
And that microculture gets a pretty brutal shock to the system here when a family of 4 boards the train and sits near our narrator.
Yeah, the dynamic shifts instantly.
It really does. The author actually notes that this family immediately gave them the ick.
Which is such a universal feeling.
We've all felt that, right? That visceral, stomach-dropping reaction when someone's energy is just aggressively off.
Oh, for sure.
So this family is a young couple, their toddler, and an older woman who is the husband's mother. And from the moment they sit down, the mother-in-law is just behaving horribly.
The author zeroes in on that power dynamic right away. It's an entirely one-sided campaign of hostility.
The young daughter-in-law is clearly just drowning. She's got a toddler squirming around. She's wrestling with all their, hefty luggage.
And her husband is completely checked out.
Completely. He is ignoring his wife's struggle entirely. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law is taking every possible opportunity to swear at the younger woman, literally berating her in front of a carriage full of strangers.
It's so hard to watch something like that.
It is. I struggle to understand why the husband just sits there. Is he terrified of his own mother, or is he just that callous?
Well, it's likely a really profound case of normalized complicity.
What do you mean by that?
So when you grow up inside a toxic dynamic, your brain often builds these emotional calluses to protect itself from the constant friction.
Oh, like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. For the husband, intervening would require a massive expenditure of social and emotional energy. It would mean turning his mother's hostility onto himself.
Which he obviously doesn't want.
Right. So his neurological path of least resistance is to simply pretend it isn't happening. But what's fascinating here is how his apathy actually functions as an active weapon.
Wow, an active weapon, just by doing nothing.
Yeah. By doing nothing, he's implicitly validating his mother's behavior.
Yeah.
And he's deeply amplifying his wife's structural isolation.
Because she's surrounded by her family, yet completely, terrifyingly alone.
Exactly.
And that isolation becomes agonizingly physical pretty quickly. So the toddler accidentally spills some water on the floor of the train.
Kids spill things. It's just what they do.
Right. But the mother-in-law doesn't just demand that the young woman clean it up. She forces the teary-eyed daughter-in-law to get down on the floor and wipe up the spilled water using her own sari.
Oh, man.
Her own clothing.
That shifts the behavior from verbal abuse to calculated psychological dismantling.
It really is a deliberate destruction of her identity. I mean, your clothing is an extension of yourself, right? Your presentation to the world. Forcing someone to use it as a rag is such a visceral display of dominance. The narrator writes about how much it pained them, that nobody cared to respond to this poor woman's distress.
Which is the bystander effect in full swing.
Yeah, she's looking around, crying, humiliated by the profanities, and the entire carriage just watches. It felt to me like the train carriage was a moving theater.
That's a good way to put it.
And the passengers were a captive audience, uncomfortably watching this tragic domestic play, but feeling totally paralyzed.
We all know the bystander effect, sure, but what's rarely talked about is the physiological toll it takes on the people sitting in that silence.
Like the stress of just watching it happen.
Yeah, because our brains are deeply wired for social survival. When you see 40 other people on a train doing absolutely nothing in the face of a conflict, your neurological threat assessment system assumes that doing nothing is the safest baseline.
So you aren't just paralyzed by fear of the aggressor.
Right. Your brain is actively telling you that breaking the social consensus of the crowd is inherently dangerous.
So everyone's brain is just screaming, don't be the outlier, don't draw the predator's attention.
Precisely. The perceived diffusion of responsibility creates this localized paralysis. Everyone assumes someone else is better equipped to handle it.
But for a 13-year-old kid watching this, their sense of justice hasn't been completely eroded by adult social conditioning yet, right?
Exactly. They aren't just passively watching. They are internalizing that egregious violation of basic human decency.
Building up that tension.
Yeah, the tension is building in their nervous system mile after mile, and they're basically absorbing the collective guilt of that silent carriage.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the moment that geographical environment finally changes. So the train arrives at their destination.
The physical break.
Right. The passengers spill out from the confined theater of the carriage onto this open, bustling railway platform.
And when the physical environment changes, the psychological rules of engagement usually shift right along with it.
Totally. So the self-important mother-in-law steps off the train, and the author notes a very specific, crucial detail here.
The bag.
Yes. She is clutching her prized possession, this blue travel bag. She places it down on the platform and immediately reloads, getting ready to start verbally abusing the daughter-in-law all over again.
But this time, the script flips.
It does. The narrator's dad finally steps in. He walks over and quietly helps the young lady with a few of her heavy bags.
A simple insertion of common decency into a total vacuum of cruelty.
And the daughter-in-law looks incredibly grateful. It's probably the only grace she's been shown in days.
I'm sure it was.
But the mother-in-law absolutely loses it. She pivots her anger away from the young woman and starts taunting the narrator's dad.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, mocking him for helping her supposedly, quote, useless daughter-in-law. And true to form, the husband is still looking the other way.
Typical.
Right. But I want to explore a theory here with you, because up until this moment, the abuse was a closed circuit within that family unit.
Right. The passengers were just observers.
Exactly. But the moment she turns her verbal attacks onto the narrator's dad, she brings an outsider into the blast radius. Did she essentially seal her own fate by breaking that invisible fourth wall?
She definitely did. Bullies routinely miscalculate their environment outside of their controlled domain.
How so?
They get so accustomed to the unchecked power they wield over their primary victim, in this case the daughter-in-law, that their brain creates this false sense of omnipotence.
Like they're untouchable.
Right. They assume their immunity extends to the broader world. So by attacking the father, the mother-in-law abruptly shifted our young narrator from a passive, empathetic bystander into an active participant.
Because now their own family is under threat.
Exactly. She activated the kid's protective instincts.
Wow, yeah.
The father provided the only disruption to the mother-in-law's narrative of total control. By attacking the man who offered a moment of grace, she proved to the 13-year-old that her cruelty wasn't just a private domestic issue anymore.
It was a toxic spill.
A toxic spill that was going to contaminate anyone who got too close. And that is the exact catalyst needed to override the bystander effect. The threat is no longer theoretical. It's directed at their dad.
Okay, let's unpack this next sequence, because the story shifts from, a sad observation into an absolute masterclass in situational awareness.
It really does.
We've got the motive, we know who the villain is. Now we get to the logistics of how a middle schooler orchestrated a flawless, improvised heist on a busy platform.
Well, the teenager's brain is uniquely suited for this, right?
Yeah.
They are hypervigilant to unfairness, and when motivated, their capacity for rapid situational assessment is actually staggering.
And we see that immediately. The kid realizes something crucial. The train they just got off is scheduled to head back to Vadodara, which is where they originally boarded, in just 5 or 10 minutes.
It's a tiny window.
A super tight window. Then, listening to the family bicker, the narrator deduces that the mother-in-law's precious blue bag sitting on the platform contains her phone and all her other personal belongings.
So the value of the target is confirmed.
Exactly. Then the narrator does the sweep of the perimeter. They look around the chaotic, bustling crowd on the platform and explicitly note the complete lack of security cameras monitoring the area.
Which is wild for a kid to notice.
Right. No cameras, a 5-minute ticking clock, a high-value target, and a chaotic environment. The kid processes train schedules, crowd dynamics, camera placements, and target vulnerabilities in a matter of seconds.
It's brilliant.
It reminds me of how pickpockets operate, you know? They don't use invisibility cloaks. They just rely on sensory overload to hide in plain sight.
That's a perfect analogy. The busy Indian railway platform acts as a magician's misdirection.
Yeah, lots of moving parts.
You have hundreds of people moving in different directions, luggage wheels clacking, announcements blaring, and in the center of it all, a loud woman yelling at a stranger.
So no one is looking at the kid.
Exactly. The human brain simply cannot process all of those inputs simultaneously, so it filters out non-threatening mundane actions. A young teenager casually picking up a bag registers as completely invisible background noise to everyone around them.
Especially to the mother-in-law, who is way too busy enjoying the sound of her own voice, yelling at the dad to actually watch her own stuff.
And that brevity of the turnaround time, like you said, 5 to 10 minutes, that removed the luxury of hesitation.
Oh, that's true.
If the train was leaving in an hour, the teenager might overthink it, or their brain's risk aversion systems might kick in and talk them out of it.
They'd chicken out.
Right. But a 5-minute window demands immediate decisive action. They see the opening of the social fabric, calculate the risk, and just step right through it.
And the phrasing in the source is just incredible here. The author writes, quote, "I was nice enough to discreetly put the MIL's precious blue bag back into the homebound train."
Just nice enough.
Just nice enough. They casually pick up the bag, pop it onto the train that's about to roll out, and walk away. The heist is complete.
It's an entirely invisible act of devastation.
Yeah.
The platform provided the anonymity for the abuse, and then provided the exact same anonymity for the retribution.
Which brings us to the immediate fallout. So the bag is on its way back to Vadodara, and our young narrator goes home happy.
Job well done.
Right. But they stick around just long enough to watch the mother-in-law and her son, who suddenly has a reason to care about something, frantically searching the platform in absolute horror.
Oh, I bet.
And the detail that really sticks with me, the narrator notes that the daughter-in-law is just standing there, quietly satisfied in her family's newfound distress.
That is a fascinating psychological phenomenon. It's often called schadenfreude, but in this case, it's more like proxy justice.
Proxy justice.
Yeah, because the daughter-in-law is entirely trapped. She can't fight back without risking her marriage, her safety, or her child's security.
She has no leverage.
Right. So when the universe seemingly drops an anvil on her tormentor, she gets to experience the relief and vindication of retribution without bearing any of the risk or guilt of executing it.
The narrator says, quote, "That was the most I could do for the poor young lady."
They gave her a moment of peace.
Or at least a really good distraction. But here's where we get to my absolute favorite part of this source. The author actually includes a postscript.
Oh, the PS.
Yeah, a PS at the end of their story, to proactively defend themselves against anyone in the comments who might call them a thief.
Ah, the human brain's desperate need to maintain the good guy identity.
Yes. They write, quote, "For those who might say it's somewhat criminal, no, it's not. The bag could have just as well been forgotten on the train, and the railway staff will house the belongings and return it to the owner if contacted."
Rationalizing it.
And then they deliver this absolute gem. Quote, "I mean, that bag needed a vacation, so I gave it one."
Oh, that is amazing. We all know that awful friction of cognitive dissonance, right?
That mental itch when your actions violate your own moral code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Society tells us from a very young age that taking someone else's property is fundamentally wrong. But the narrator also deeply believes that this woman deserved to be punished for her profound cruelty.
So there's a clash.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is how quickly the human brain invents a loophole to scratch that itch. It constructs a defense attorney-level rationalization in milliseconds.
Just to bridge the gap between I stole a bag and I am a good person.
Precisely.
Wait, but cognitive dissonance usually feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The narrator here seems like completely untroubled by what they did. How does that work?
Well, because the rationalization was entirely successful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. To eliminate the discomfort, the author reframes the narrative from theft to expedited bureaucracy.
Expedited bureaucracy. I love that.
They argue that they didn't steal the bag to keep the phone or the money. They merely facilitated a hypothetical scenario where the bag was accidentally left behind.
Right.
They're telling themselves, I didn't commit a crime. I just forced the railway system's lost and found protocol into early activation.
That is Olympic-level mental gymnastics. I didn't steal it, I just rerouted it to customer service. And calling it a vacation is just brilliant.
It's a whimsical framing mechanism.
Yeah.
By calling it a vacation, it softens the severity of the act.
It makes it sound harmless.
Exactly. It allows the narrator, and really all of us reading the story, to fully enjoy the karmic retribution without feeling bogged down by the legal technicalities.
That's true.
It transforms a petty theft into a cosmic timeout for a bully. It's a survival tool, really. We are so desperate to view ourselves as righteous that we will bend reality to ensure our actions align with our internal hero narrative.
It totally makes sense when you look at the messy realities of how justice actually works. I mean, the legal system isn't designed to punish a mother-in-law for systematically destroying her daughter-in-law's dignity on a train.
No, it's not.
There's no police officer you can call to arrest someone for making a woman wipe up water with her own clothes. Formal systems only care about binary offenses like broken laws or stolen goods.
They are completely blind to the slow, grinding cruelty of domestic emotional abuse.
Which is exactly why stepping into that void feels so intensely cathartic. When formal justice fails, informal justice, like a 13-year-old relocating a bag, feels deeply necessary to rebalance the social order.
I couldn't agree more.
So let's take that a step further and look at the whole arc we just traveled. We started inside the claustrophobic, paralyzing atmosphere at a train carriage. We watched a deeply uncomfortable psychological dismantling play out while an entire micro-village of passengers desperately looked the other way.
Held hostage by their own threat assessment instincts.
Right. Then the physical environment shifted. The bully overreached by attacking a helpful outsider, and the protective instincts of an observant teenager were ignited.
And it all culminated in a brilliantly improvised, camera-free act of karmic justice.
Utilizing the exact same sensory overload that had previously shielded the abuse.
Full circle.
To you listening, I think this story resonates so deeply because it taps into a fundamental human craving.
Yeah, that sense of fairness.
When we see someone acting with casual cruelty, behaving like the basic rules of decency simply don't apply to them, we all harbor this secret, desperate wish to see them face immediate, confusing consequences.
Absolutely.
We want the universe to step in and say, no, actually, you can't treat people like that.
We crave a balanced ledger, even if it requires a teenager to sneak a thumb onto the scales.
And this kid didn't just wish for the universe to intervene, they became the instrument of the universe's confusion.
They really did.
But before we wrap up, I know you always like to look at the unseen ripple effects of these events.
Always.
So if we assume the narrator's rationalization held true, and if the system worked, and the mother-in-law eventually got her blue bag and her phone back from the railway staff,
Yeah.
what stands out to you about the aftermath?
I keep thinking about the waiting period.
What do you mean?
Let's say it took a week for the railway staff to process the bag and return it. What happened in those 7 days?
Oh, wow.
Did that profound inconvenience, that sudden and terrifying loss of control and connectivity, fundamentally humble the mother-in-law? Did the exhausting stress of replacing cards and missing her phone distract her enough to give that young daughter-in-law a lasting, meaningful reprieve from the abuse? Or did that forced vacation just give the mother-in-law one more excuse to be utterly miserable to everyone around her?
Oh, man. Does the punishment actually rewrite the behavior, or does it just give the bully new ammunition?
Exactly.
We'll never know. The narrator walked away, the homebound train pulled out of the station, and the rest is a mystery.
It is.
But it's an incredible thought to leave on. So, to our listener, the next time you find yourself on a long commute, trapped in one of those temporary moving villages, keep your eyes open.
You never know what you'll see.
You never know when you might witness the perfect setup for a little cosmic rebalancing. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.